Sam Hanks' career spanned over 2 decades on the nation's speedways, involving midgets, stock cars, and the big championship automobiles. Born in Columbus, Ohio, he moved to California at age 6, and in 1936 started his illustrious racing career in the midget racing circuits around Los Angeles. Touring the United States coast to coast in the late 40s, he won over 80 races. He drove in 12 Indianapolis 500 races. He won national championships in midgets and Indianapolis championship cars. But Hank's single goal was to win the Indianapolis 500. In 1957, he drove a revolutionary lay-down roadster to victory. His dream fulfilled, Sam Hanks announced his retirement in the winner's circle. He was then appointed director of racing for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and served for 21 years. This part of Southern California, I guess, was really, when you think about it, in addition to the beauty and all the surfing and all the sports, was really a hotbed of automobile racing when you started, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. We had the old Ascot Speedway out there in North Alhambra, and we had the tracks up in Oakland, and we also had an old board track here in Beverly Hills, way back.
I guess we're going to have a little chance to talk about it as we go on, but you were part of a gang of real hot shoes from Southern California that really set Indianapolis on its ear right after the war, weren't you? I mean, you and Walt Faulkner and Jack McGrath and Vukovich came in there with a different driving style and totally more aggressive way of treating the track.
We were the midget guys that they didn't like too well. We invaded their big territory.
You know, Sam, looking through a history of midget racing like this, and we talked a couple of minutes ago about the midget drivers and how they changed really the face of racing right after World War II. But let's go back a little bit farther, back into the 30s when you started racing. Midget racing was something really special then, wasn't it?
It really was. When I started in 36, we had outboard engines, Evinrude 460s, and some of the engines were motorcycles and Hendersons and stuff like that. So it's come a long ways, and in the Offie, when it came into the picture about in 36, 35, that kind of changed the picture quite a bit.
That was a scaled-down, 4-cylinder Indianapolis Miller Offenhauser design, 2-cam, little baby racing engine, wasn't it?
Right, it was exactly, looked like a 270 or a 240, just scaled down is exactly what it was.
Sam, you were, I guess you could call you a classic Southern California hot rodder, weren't you? You started building hot rods and one thing and another before you got racing
Correct.
Formally.
Yeah, I used to go up to Muroc Dry Lakes, which is Edwards Air Force Base today, and we'd have straightaway runs. I think we had the first drag strip racing anywhere in the United States at Edwards.
Is that right?
Yes, I really do. And this is back, they were rating up there before I went up, and I was there in 32 and 33, so they must have been running them back there in the 20s, in the late 20s.
By the time World War II started, you were one of the, if not the top, certainly one, you and Ronnie Householder and perhaps a couple of other fellows were absolutely dominated midget racing all over the country. Tell me a little bit about that lifestyle. How many races a week, years and whatever that you guys did?
Oh, well, I'll tell you, it's a wonder we're alive, any of us. We always used to sit around at the racetrack and say, gee, we'll never make 50, you know. Here I'm a little older than that now. But anyhow, when we raced back east, campaigned the United States, my first year, I went into Detroit Motor City Speedway. From there, I went to Miami, Toledo High. Then I went from there clear into Gasoline Alley in Patterson, New Jersey. And the first day I pulled in, I called Ted Horn, who headquarters there, and I said, Ted, get me a garage in Gasoline Alley. He said, you want a single or a double? And I said, I need a double. So I pulled in, and I said, where's the race? And the guy started rattling them off. There was about 4 races in one night. I wanted to make them all, you know. So anyhow, we ran, I run one week there, I think I ran 8 races in 1 week. I ran every day, every night, and a Sunday afternoon. Unbelievable.
How many races would you run a year?
Oh, gosh.
100? Must have run 100 races, easy.
No, I don't think it would be 100. It would be probably, see, I only ran about 4 months in the east.
Oh,
out here, we only had 2 races a week,
okay.
See. And then our season was a little long here, but back there was quite short.
Sam, you were your mechanic. You were the man. You didn't carry anybody else with you. You were a one-man band,
Yeah.
huh?
I did my own engine work, chassis setup. I even mounted every tire on that car. for a long, long time because I didn't trust anybody mounting a tire because I figured if it blew, it would be my fault because I didn't do it myself. But I did have a good running machine and brought a lot of innovations into the
You
engines.
won a pair of 3A American Automobile Association, which preceded USAC and CART, the biggest major championship series. You won a national championship twice in midgets.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah, I won the 3A once in '49, but I was declared the national midget champion in 1940.
47, 46, was it? Right after the war?
Yeah, well, way before that, 41 or 42, I think it was.
When the championships
42.
start to stack up like that.
Oh, yeah.
You won a stock car championship.
No, I never won
You
a
know-
stock car. I did. I won two California stock car championships, Los
Okay.
Angeles right here. But I never was the national stock car champion.
Speaking of stock cars, tell me about Alice's Ford.
Uh-oh. Here we go. I'm glad she's not here. Well, I went to Milwaukee. I was doing the tire test for Firestone there at the Speedway at the time. And, what was the owner's name of the track up there? Marchese.
Yeah.
Tom Marchese called me. He said, we're going to have a stock car race up here. And he said, I'd like for you to drive in it. He said, I got a guy that owns a Cadillac. He wants to enter it. Of course, the Cadillac won the race before last year. So I said, heck, I'll drive her. Have the radio and the heater and everything else, you know. So we got up there, and I drove Alice's Ford up. She took the Lincoln that we've just got, and she drove it to California. But I took her Ford, her personal Ford, brand new, up to Milwaukee. And I get up there, and Tom says, Sam, he says, the guy withdrew the Cadillac. He says, what are you driving? And there was no chance for a post-entry or nothing, but I got there the day before the race, you know. And he says, I said, well, I'm driving Alice's brand new Ford. And he says, well, let's take it down to Swenson's Ford here in Milwaukee. And he says, they'll sponsor the race and put racing tires on it and fix it all up. So I went down there, and they did. And we went out and qualified the thing and finished 6th in the race out of about 40 cars.
Dead stock.
And I got home, and Alice says, well, I saw in the paper where you got 6th at Milwaukee in the stock car race. She says, I knew you didn't drive the Cadillac because she said, you told me that before I left Indianapolis. And I said, well, I drove a Ford. She says, whose was it? I says, yours. And she says, my car? And she says, how much did you get? And I said, $600. She says, well, give me half of it right now. So I gave her half.
And needless to say, you never got a chance to drive that car again in a race.
No.
But the days of barnstorming, living out of the back of in motels and hotels and station wagon, towing race cars up and down, no interstates in those days,
No way.
just must have beat you up as hard traveling as it did racing, didn't it?
I think it did, probably more. When I made my first trip east in '39, you know, it was 2-lane highways all the way across practically. And there was no motels. You could find a room to sleep in somebody's house once in a while. They'd have a room for rent or something. And it was really something. I slept so many nights in the station wagon, it was unbelievable. Very uncomfortable, too.
That I believe. Well, Sam, you came right out of midgets and went to Indianapolis in a relatively short period of time, did you?
Yes, 4-year period.
Just bang, right to this big speedway.
Yeah.
How about that first year? What was that all
Well, it
about?
was quite interesting. Leon DeRay thought I should be driving Indianapolis right off the bat, so I drove for him the first year there. And we qualified 123 miles an hour. It wasn't too bad at that time on the narrow tires. But in the race, it had a slight drizzle. And we ran the race under the yellow light for the last 50 laps.
Okay, I remember that.
Yeah.
Shaw won the race, didn't he?
Shaw won the race. Rex Mays was second.
Right.
And I just came out of the pits. They had a broken gas tank bracket on the car, and I fell in line right behind Rex. So here was the three of us, Wilbur, Rex, and I. And the Rex combined, he said, wave, and he says, turn on the green light, God darn it, because he can catch Shaw.
Sure.
And I started waving like he did, and Wilbur would come down, he'd hold his hand up, ooh, do that.
You're telling it's raining, but it wasn't really raining. Not hard enough.
Well, if it rained a little harder, they'd have red flagged it.
Sure.
But for 50 laps.
Just keep around and around.
Yeah.
Next year, a little tougher, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a little tougher. We qualified for the race there, Brock, and then the day of carburation, which was usually on a Thursday, it rained all week, and we had our drivers' meeting Saturday, and after the meeting was over, they gave us only a half an hour for carburation run. I ran over and jumped in the car, and I looked, and the seat belt wasn't there, and he says, oh, we put it under the cushion. I says, oh, that's right, leave it there.
You usually ran with seat belt?
Always.
Uh-huh.
And so I just jumped in. I said, we're going to run 4 or 5 laps to see if all the gauges are right. And I come down about the 3rd lap, and the connecting rod broke right below the wrist pin, and it cut the engine in half and locked up.
Oh,
and I couldn't declutch it. And it went a big slide and went through the infield fence and over the creek. And without the seat belt on, I flew out of it. And I lit in the grass, thank golly, and I slid quite a ways and had my new uniform on to drive, and all that was left was the cuffs and it looked like I had shorts on. But I didn't break a bone or nothing. I was in the hospital 4 days and walked out.
That's really the only bad crash you ever had.
Only time I was ever in a car was upside down in my whole career.
Okay, now you went through the war in the aircraft industry, and then you came back, but you really didn't have any super good rides right after the war, did you, at the Speedway? I mean,
no, I didn't. That was the days of when we had kind of Mickey Mouse cars and stuff, you know, and not too good equipment on them. And I really fought a few years there where I'd run maybe 15, 20 laps or 30 or 40.
I remember, what year was it that you won the national championship in that black Bardol car? That was, what, 53?
53, when I was the national champion. And I carried the one in 1954.
It's interesting, as I think back on your career, you're kind of a guy that seemed to strive for a goal, and then once you got that goal, you'd go on to something else. And as I remember, once you won the national championship, you didn't try to defend it. You then concentrated exclusively on Indianapolis. Is that right?
I ran about 3 or 4 races on the championship trail after I was the champion. And then I retired from that and just concentrated on Indianapolis.
Did you run any midgets in those days at all? Or did you
a few in there, but not too many after that year.
Some stock cars, as I recall.
Yes, I was in a stock car deal there in 55, 6, and 7.
But the open wheel race cars, that was Indianapolis exclusively, huh?
Right.
Tell me about the year before the victory. That was, as I recall, a super race, wasn't it?
That was a super race, and that was the one, that I think, Brock, was the hardest race I ever drove in Indianapolis, 56, when I got second. Paul Russo blew a tire, and there was a whole gang of guys standing on the brakes, and I couldn't quite slow mine down, and I hit a car in front of me with my left front wheel on his right rear. I broke the wheel, bent the front axle, and as I slid off the course, I caught the clutch and saved the engine. I was down in the infield. And I went on back on the track, and I went by a lot of guys on the yellow, but my pit was north of the starting line, so I didn't improve a position.
Okay.
And I got back in the pits, and there was nobody in my pits. They saw me all run off down there, and they thought I made the creek, and they said, Sam can't swim, we better go down and save him.
So they're down trying to get you out of the creek.
And the pit crew right next to me, they jumped over the wall, put the jack into the car, and says, Sam, which wheel? And I said, the one says LF on it, left front. And they had it off and on before the crew got back. And they wanted to know if I wanted fuel, and I says, no, just get me out of here before I lose a lap on the field. So when I came out, I was in dead last position, about
33rd. Well, 30th, you lost some
cars.
cars.
We lost some cars in that. And they didn't turn the green light on until around 30th or 35th lap, somewhere in there. So I spotted the field, say, 30 laps.
So you were running a 170-lap race instead of a 200-lap race,
right.
Basically. Okay.
And so I worked my way through the traffic and everything else and got in second position and got second by 20 seconds behind Pat Flaherty.
And must have been catching them.
Oh, yeah.
So that must have really fired you up for 457.
Yeah. But, you know, strange thing, Brock, I almost quit then.
Is that right?
Yeah, because I thought the place was against me. You know, really. And I just drove my heart out in 56. And when the race was over, we went back to Gould Greenland Hotel, and now we're sitting there, Alice and I and a bunch of guys. And I said, you know, I just ought to give this up. And Alice says, well, you're the judge of that. And so when Sally built the car, started building it. See, I was driving for Sally when I got second in the regular Curtis car, Rooster.
Right.
So George was, we're designing this car before we went to Indy in 56.
Mm-hmm.
And he called me on the phone one day, and he says, Sam, he says, I'll build this car under one stipulation, that you drive her.
That's the lay-down car.
That was the lay-down engine. I went down and looked it all over, and I says, hey, this looks good. I says, let's give her one more shot.
And that was the one that you just really just blew them away, didn't you? I mean, that was just dominated. That was a record speed, 135 miles an hour.
We broke the record by 5 miles an hour, which was Vuki's record.
Right. And as I recall, you just dominated that race almost from the start to the finish.
Yeah, after I got in first place on about, roughly, I would say, around the 30th lap, it was my race. When I made my second pit stop, Jim Rathman got ahead of me 10 seconds. And when I came out of the pits, I says, uh-oh. So I ate up the 10 seconds, caught him, got by him, and I thought I'd better get a little lead on him because he'll be doing the same thing on my third stop.
Right.
So when I made my third stop, it was my best pit stop, quickest one. And I pulled out of the pits, and I'm looking ahead for, where's this Rathman, you know? I couldn't see him. I turned around, looked back, and he was about 2 feet behind the tail. And I said, so long, Daddy.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Just drove away from him.
Yeah, the thing was running good.
But then, that was it. You said adios to Indianapolis, basically in Victory Lane. Is that right?
Yes, I did. I announced it right there, and Charlie Brockman was one of the announcers. He come up and he said, Sam, I think you're crying. I said, yeah, and so are you, Charlie, because I really was.
Is that right?
Well, that was a long pull, you know, after that Indy race. And anyhow, it was just unbelievable. It was the greatest victory in my life, you know, naturally.
Sam, after the retirement, though, you didn't by any means disconnect yourself from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, did you?
No, fortunately, Mr. Holman called me here at the home about Christmas time after that in '57 and said, Sam, you coming back to racing? I says, yes, I'll be there for everyone. He says, well, you're coming early. I couldn't figure out what he wanted. He says, I thought they wanted to put an armband on me. And I says, well, I'll see what I can do. I'll call you back. So I had to get out of a commitment up in Calgary, Canada. And so I called him on the place phone, and a little later on I said, well, I don't want to be a part of the sanctioning body. I says, oh, he says, this is for the Speedway. And I says, oh, beautiful, you know. So we come back there, and I sat in the grandstand. Everybody ran up and says, what's going to be, the president? And I says, no way, that's that man's job. So we decided on director of racing.
Which you stayed for a long time.
21 years.
21 years. And also, of course, a lot of consultant work outside, within the racing community over those same period of time. So you stayed busy.
Ray Bessis and Monroe and stuff like that.
Aviator. Flew a lot, didn't you? Still?
Yeah.
You and Alice both flew.
Yes.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And a little supersonic, as I recall.
Yeah, we went up to Edwards Air Force Base with Chuck Yeager, and I flew the T-38, which is the F-5 fighter plane with a two-seater in it for training. And I made 2 trips up there with him on that. And then about 6 months later, I went up and flew the F-104 with Jerry Gentry and got my Mach 2 pin.
Mach 1, Mach 2.
Yeah.
So you really haven't backed down a whole lot. In fact, maybe you're going faster.
Yeah, sometimes.
You got, I'll tell you what, I can't tell you how much fun it's been sitting around here talking to you. I just can't thank you enough for sharing your reminiscences. Great career, fantastic guy. Thanks for everything.